Welcome back to Delft. The Western Cape is where we're broadcasting part of our election roadshow. We're at the Voorbrug Hoërskool, and I must say it's been a pleasure being here this morning. It really has been. But let's take a look at the rest of the province as well. And the youth form a very, very big part of these elections because, as you know, there's a drive to try and get as many of the youth to the polls as possible. So we're talking about 3 million voters here in the Western Province, or the Western Cape. And there's this initiative to motivate young people to take place in the democratic process. And this, of course, moved to Oudtshoorn in the Little Karoo. Now, the town's municipality was recently put under administration due to years of fraud, corruption and maladministration. It's an organization called Take Your Hashtag to the Polls. It's a roadshow that's been traveling throughout the country to try and get the youth to take part in the local government elections. Take a have a look.
Getting clued up about their local politics. The youth of South Africa have shown their revolutionary spirit over the past couple of years through hashtag movements such as Fees Must Fall and Roads Must Fall. But many still don't know how to influence government to improve service delivery to their communities.
You know, the past few years have shown us that young people in South Africa are not apathetic in any way, and that it's just that, you know, the different parties and government just needs to tap into what they're interested in. It's not that they don't care, it's just that they don't care about certain things.
Oudtshoorn municipality was put under administration in July last year. More than 130 cases of misconduct by various officials and councillors from different parties are being investigated, as well as numerous criminal cases of fraud and corruption. Under the administrator's watch, the town's debt of 310 million rand has so far been cut with 40 million rand, but there's still a long way to go.
You have an explosion of media, yet you still have very little knowledge on how government works and how to influence government. And sessions like this actually help to do this. And I would love youth and community at large to challenge their governments and their elected representatives to do the right thing, but to address the kind of challenges that they face and enable them to do so.
The youth was also educated on how party and government funding can lead to corruption. Using the arms deal and Gupta Gate as examples, it was explained how donor companies can influence politicians' decision-making by only making funds available if they are benefited in the end.
We want the youth to get more involved in their political parties and also at local level in what is going on in their communities, and also to see why is service delivery not competent and why service is not rendered properly in their communities, and to get to know what is happening.
Many young people were convinced that they need to vote on election day.
I will definitely be voting on the 3rd of August here in Oudtshoorn at the Blikkiesdorp Chalet, I'm stated. And yes, I will think my vote will count for a better future for Oudtshoorn as well as the Western Cape.
Ik heb het nog nooit geprobeerd om te stemmen, maar ik denk als ik stem, gaan het de verandering maken.
They've been encouraged to take their frustrations and concerns, their hashtags, to the polls on the 3rd of August and decide which party and public representatives will be best suited to assist them in solving it. Tanya Krause, SABC News, Oudtshoorn.
Yeah, I must say, a huge move to get the youth involved in the elections this year, and hoping for the greatest turnout yet in these particular municipal elections. Let's talk about an organisation now called the Open Democracy Advice Centre. And joining us from there, the head of advocacy is Alison Tilley, and of course from Democracy Advice Centre. Good to have you. Welcome to the programme.
Good morning.
All right, tell us, what exactly does your organisation do?
Well, we work on making sure that there is credible information available to communities. We find that one of the things that makes for actions in communities which makes a difference is having solid, reliable, credible information.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you work in a lot of communities around the Western Cape, but this one in particular, Blikkiesdorp, is one of the communities. How much do communities in the Western Cape understand the concept of social justice?
I think they understand social justice perfectly well. Their experience in communities is certainly in Blikkiesdorp, is not one of social justice on a range of issues, including health and security, and of course the question of permanent housing, which is one of their main issues.
I mean, we were chatting a bit earlier and we were saying there's about 1 million people that are waiting for a house here in the Western Cape. And I mean, that only leads to a lot of problems with the way people live and the bad situations that they find themselves in. I mean, what do you find when you work in these communities? What are some of the situations there are?
Well, in this particular instance, you're looking at a temporary relocation area, which was established by the city in order to house people for 6 months. And of course, it's 7 years later, and the clock is still ticking, and there's no solution in sight. So the conditions in the community are certainly not ideal. You can imagine the quality of the housing 7 years later, and a situation the city created. So we think a situation the city will solve.
And also backyard dwellings. I mean, this is something that is a huge problem and a big issue in these communities, I imagine.
Well, ironically, Blikkiesdorp is unusual in that regard because there are rules about building structures, including building fences and reinforcing houses. So, in fact, Blikkiesdorp is one of the places that doesn't really have a problem with backyard structures because the rules are so stringent around what the community may and may not do.
It's interesting, but that's just this community. But if the other communities that you work in, I mean, is that one of the big issues you deal with?
Yes, of course. And people, I think, through the city are asking not necessarily for housing immediately. They've been extraordinarily patient, many of them on the housing list for 15, 20 years. But what they certainly are asking for is a credible plan which will resolve the issues in such a way that things happen and we don't have another 20 years.
How important are these elections for these communities? I mean, obviously you talk to them. Are they going to go out there and vote? Is this how they feel, their voice, their ability to get what they're asking for?
Well, I think for this community in particular, they've been under a number of different administrations and promises have been made. And frankly, the level of confidence in politicians delivering on those promises is very, very low. I'd say at an all-time low. And I would say there's very little confidence in political parties delivering meaningful change.
So that reads into apathy, and a lot of the time they decide, well, what does my vote mean? So they just stay away from the polls. Is that your understanding?
Well, I wouldn't read it as apathy. I would say it's more commitment to using community mobilization and working through alternative structures, because if party politics doesn't work, you have to find another way.
Which can be dangerous.
Well, certainly it's my view that it's not ideal, and it's one of the reasons we have violent protests, which is, of course, one of the things I'd encourage you to cover in your news coverage.
Well, we must look into it. Just finally, I mean, obviously we know that this community is faced with an uncertain future of being relocated. Your organisation, do they assist in any way?
Well, certainly we are in an ongoing process of supporting the community with other organisations like Right to Know in order to make sure that they have solid, credible information on which to base their actions going forward. So we'll continue to do that, and the city's promised to engage and provide information on an ongoing basis, so that's certainly a step in the right direction.
All right, all the best with the hard work. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but thanks so much for talking to us here on the programme. This was Alison Tilley from the Open Democracy Advice Centre. We're going to take a quick break on the programme. When we return, this Delft big band that's been providing us with the most amazing music, we'll be chatting to them after this. Stay tuned.